Hey guys, so I want to make a quick update video for the Herald Bomber Flicker Strike Ritualist. I am now level 95 and am at a whopping 7.9k energy shield on this character, rocking 212 spirit, still 0 evasion, armor, and block across the board, and max resist as per usual. Now, I made a couple of upgrades to this character. Of course, part of it is in the gear, but the other part is in its gems as well. Quite notably, you might notice that we have replaced our Reaper's Invocation with Cast on Critical, and we have also replaced, or not replaced rather, we have added Wind Dancer into our kit as well. So I want to talk about these two changes that I made so far. First off is Cast on Critical. So before I had Reaper's Invocation linked to all the same support gems, and now I've just replaced it with Cast on Critical. As a result, I've had to increase the amount of spirit by quite a lot. In total, I think I need about like 190 to 200 spirit or something like that to run everything. Now, the reason why I'm running Cast on Critical instead of Reaper's Invocation is because of the fact that I just find that Cast on Critical is a lot more consistent compared to Reaper's Invocation. Now, Reaper's Invocation has the positive upside of the fact that it only costs 30 spirit, whereas Cast on Critical costs 100. But that is, in my opinion, the only upside. The downside are as follows, right? First of all, you need to hold down the ability to be able to cast it and cast the Profane Rituals. Now, that's not too big of an issue because while you're flickering, you just hold down the button. But the problem comes when after you finish your flicker, sometimes it does this weird thing where it'll continue flickering even though you're not pressing the flicker button. Like, as long as you're holding down the Reaper's Invocation button, it'll continue using the skill that you were using before, which is kind of annoying. But that's not the biggest reason why I'm using Cast on Critical instead. The biggest reason why is because I find that Cast on Critical is just way more consistent at proccing Profane Ritual for power charges. Now, let me explain. And I was talking about this with Korihor the other day as well. He was on my stream for a little bit. And we have both found that Cast on Critical just procs a lot more often while we're flicker striking. And it's weird because, first off, we are shattering corpses a lot of times, which means that technically there are not any corpses on the ground for Profane Ritual. And that's one of the reasons why it is so inconsistent, I guess, with getting our power charges. But the thing is, if we're shattering corpses and there are no corpses on the ground, how are we able to use Profane Ritual to get charges? So we, and probably a lot of other people, have probably come to the conclusion that potentially there's a little bit of a grace period before the enemy fully dies or something like that, or before the shatter actually happens, where Profane Ritual is actually able to hit those corpses and get the power charges. And in that situation, in that case, we have found that potentially, maybe because of the fact that we need to manually press Reaper's Invocation, the Cast on Critical just is a lot better at capturing that little grace period to be able to give you more consistent power charges. So that, at the end of the day, is why I decided to go Cast on Crit, just because it is way more consistent, in my experience, to get the power charges needed to keep Flicker Strike up and running. If you don't care about that, or if you don't have enough spirit because you don't have it on your equipment, I've changed it so that my chest armor is equipment has spirit, and my amulet has spirit. If you can't do that, then still you can stay on the Reaper's Invocation. But in my opinion and in my feel, this is just way more comfortable because you don't have to press a button, but also it's just way more consistent. So that is why I'm doing Cast on Critical. But as a result, I have actually removed elemental conflux or whatever it was, right? The thing that makes it so that you can't elemental focus. There we go. The support gem that makes it so that you can't deal ailments on enemies, I've taken that off. Now, the reason why I've taken that off, well, first off, the reason why I had that on in the first place is because it allowed us to get our Profane Ritual charges and our power charges a lot more consistently when we don't have any, right? But because we're running on Cast on Critical, again, Cast on Critical makes it so that you're much more consistently able to get charges from Profane Ritual. I found that you don't really need Elemental Focus anymore, and as a result, I've put back on Innervate on this ability. So that way, we are able to use this to clear a lot better, because when you had Elemental Focus, you weren't proccing any Heralds, which means it wasn't really clearing mobs as well, and you could easily get overrun when you don't have any power charges to flicker. So that's kind of like the whole reason why we have this current gem setup. But the other thing that we added was we said put an unset ring onto our character so that we can have another socket to run Wind Dancer. Now, I made a whole video about Wind Dancer, an offensive Wind Dancer, right before this one. So if you guys haven't seen that, please go check it out. I'll leave a link in the description below. But we put in Wind Dancer onto our character because Wind Dancer is actually really, really good at keeping our character safe. Now, you might be wondering, like, why are you running Wind Dancer? You're not using any evasion. Well, as I've mentioned in the previous video that, again, I linked in the description below, Wind Dancer is really, really good at clearing monsters, which means that a lot of times, especially as a Flicker Strike character, when you get stuck in a huge group of enemies, like Flicker Strike kind of has this thing where it just suddenly stops because you run out of power charges, right? And you could just be in the middle of a huge pack. And when that happens, Wind Dancer is actually there to keep you safe because when the enemy hits you, and you build a damaged Wind Dancer, it will just blow up all the enemies around you. And just so you guys can see that in action, I will show y'all in this map. We're just going to put a random map in here, random tier 15, and I'm just going to go dive head first into some enemies, and you'll see how effective this is. So pretend we're going to go dive into a group of enemies because, well, you can already see it happening, right? Basically, you know, whenever you're Flicker Striking, and sometimes you end up being like, oh, shoot, I'm stuck, Step Bro, please help, right? Well, Wind Dancer is there to keep you safe because it's an attack move on its own. It just kills everything, right? So you don't have to really worry about like getting stuck in the middle of monsters anymore when you're Flicker Striking, when you have Wind Dancer set up in the way that I have. It just means that you're able to, of course, you know, damage over time effects on the ground are still going to screw you over. But other than that, monster hits and stuff are just going to proc Wind Dancer. And you're just going to be very safe. And you don't really have to worry about dying ever whenever you get stuck in the middle of monsters, which happens quite often when you're playing Flicker Strike. So yeah, that's the whole reason why we do Wind Dancer, and I would also, again, recommend most people who are playing a melee character, or any character in general who is, you know, able to use Wind Dancer, to consider using Wind Dancer, because no matter how fast your character is, no matter how strong it is, there are definitely times where you're going to get hit by something random. And when that happens, you're going to want to have a little bit of safety on top of you, and just build Wind Dancer. For Wind Dancer, we currently have Ambush, Cold Penetration, Embitter, Close Combat, and Elemental Armament. This is all to make it so that Wind Dancer is doing as much cold damage as possible, and then also proccing Freeze, and then proccing the Elemental Explosions from our Herald Chains. So that's the kind of other big change that we had. And of course, we got big changes on our equipment, right? We upgraded our helmet to just be a lot more tanky. We also got our boots up, which, you know, that was a little bit of a endeavor, let's just say, to get these boots. But we upgraded that as well. And of course, we got our unset ring to get our character to where it is. I'd say where our character is in terms of ceiling is pretty close to the top of where I would expect it to be. Of course, you know, you could definitely upgrade way more, right? Like this one, definitely nowhere close to being optimal. There's definitely a lot more I can upgrade here, but I would say that the character is in a very, very good state where it's very survivable, does all the content very well, and, you know, just generally cruises through maps. But yeah, that's a short little update for this character. As per usual, if you have any questions, leave it in the comments below. And also, if you enjoy these type of videos, please, hitting the sub button is the best way to support the channel. And also, I stream every single night on twitch.tv/MesoXChiru, and we'll be streaming Clutch Core very, very soon, in probably, I don't know, like less than 12 hours, something like that. So hopefully I'll see you guys there, but if not, hopefully I'll see y'all on the next video. All right, guys, peace.